Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm going to talk about my latest book, War on the Middle Class, How the Government, Big Business, and Special Interest Groups Are Waging War on the American Dream and How to Fight Back, written by Lou Dobbs. Now, Lou Dobbs is a conservative commentator on television. He describes himself as a liberal Republican, which is a bit of an oxymoron to my mind, like jumbo shrimp or compassionate conservative. I think it would be more honest to say that he is a liberal independent, because he really doesn't have a lot in common with the current Republican Party. Maybe the Republican Party of 50 years ago, but not the Republican Party of the 21st century. And Lou Dobbs and I actually agree on many different topics, because even though I vote Democrat, I do so from the point of view of that considering myself an independent, a liberal independent. There just isn't any way I can vote for the current Republican Party. If things were to change, my affiliation is mutable. I am concerned about liberal political points of view, and I don't really care who I have to vote into office to get them to be put into place. Mr. Dobbs has some very good points. He believes that corporations and the government have colluded to undermining the middle class and stratifying us into a society of serfs and a very small percentage of people at the top who are in charge. Now, Mr. Dobbs thinks this has been going on for about the last 10 to 20 years. I think it's been going on for at least the last 40. And he seems to blame the Democrats and the Republican equally. And while I do consider both parties responsible, I consider the Republican Party to be an active, aggressive opponent of the middle class, as opposed to the Democrats, who I view more of a passive, spineless opponent of the middle class. They basically just let the Republicans roll over America, and they do nothing to stop them. Depresses me to no end, because they actually have the ability to do something, and they just refuse to do it. And then there are the blue dog Democrats who just really want to be Republicans. But I mean, this is all having to do with the fact that our politicians have been bought completely by the corporate interests in America. The American political system is the best money can buy, and the money being used is corporate money. And all these things are being done, and they're not going to benefit us, the middle class, nor the poor either, I should point out. They're going to get just as much equally screwed. But the middle class is being slowly squeezed out of existence. For example, if the cost of living had been applied to the minimum wage, it would be around $12 an hour right now, as opposed to whatever it is right now, which is, I think, something like $7.35 an hour, which is obscene. You can't live on that income in America anywhere that I know of. He and I agree that our education system needs to be improved. I'm opposed to tenure. I think that if any job offered a person the ability to suddenly never have to worry about getting fired, they're going to lose interest in doing their job well. They need to have merit-based pay. I firmly believe that. He agrees that immigration needs to be revamped, that the legal immigration needs to be streamlined. I believe 3 different U.S. agencies handle immigration in America, which is absurd. We need to streamline that into one agency, make the process easier to both understand and to complete, and increase the number of people who are allowed to legally immigrate into America. On the other hand, Mr. Dobbs and I are both highly opposed to illegal immigration. I know that makes me sound like a racist, and I'm sorry. I see it as the difference between inviting someone into your home and having them break in. You don't ask the people who break in to hang around. You ask them to leave, then you get the police to arrest them. If you want to come to this country, do so legally. Otherwise, go away. I have lots of coworkers that are immigrants from every continent except Australia and Antarctica, and I value them. They've exposed me to worldviews and religious traditions that I would have never had a chance to understand on a personal basis. I'm glad they're here. I welcome them. But I don't want anyone here who has broken the law to do it. If you have to break the law, rethink what you're doing. Mr. Dobbs and I agree on a number of points. Almost all the points, kind of interestingly. He and I disagree about the media. Mr. Dobbs feels that the media has a liberal bias. Now, I will give him that journalists themselves, by and large, are liberal. I think it's something like 60 to 70% of journalists vote liberal, mostly Democrat. However, the people that control the information that these journalists create are called editors. And editors are almost exclusively conservative and Republican. So the reports that you get to see, newspapers, radio, television, are being filtered through conservative people. So it doesn't matter if the people creating them are liberal. If the gatekeeper won't let these things through, then the only thing you're going to see is going to be what's keeping the corporate masters in charge of those news sources happy. So yes, journalists are liberal, but it doesn't mean that the news sources they provide for us, the TV channels, the newspapers, the radio stations, it doesn't mean that they are liberal. So I think that's something he got wrong there, and I think it's because he's feeling very much in the minority as he refuse himself as a traditional conservative surrounded by liberal people, which he is. So I can kind of understand where he came from. I enjoyed the book. It was thought-provoking. It was depressing when you see the number of points he brings up about how our middle class is being impacted. For example, in 1980, the average American CEO made 42 times as much as the base employee of their corporation. In Europe, I think current numbers are that a CEO makes 36 times, and that's in the 21st century. Do you want to know what they make in 2006 in America? 431 times their base pay of their lowest paid employee. 431 times! That's obscene and absurd. Greed has taken over our nation, and it's dragging the middle class down with it. So, if you have any interest in knowing more about how the middle class is being negatively impacted in the 21st century in America, I recommend this book. It's informative, it's interesting, but it isn't going to cheer you up.